Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of academic reading and writing. The topic of today's lecture is what is a map of knowledge. I'm your teacher Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Kohat University of Science and Technology. Dear students, discussion agenda for this class is that I will start with the question that what is knowledge, and then we will move towards another question, that is that what is a knowledge map, and then we will look at the knowledge mapping techniques, and I will tell you that how we can map knowledge and what are the different types of knowledge maps. And in the end of this lecture, I will tell you about the benefits of knowledge mapping. So this is the outline of today's lecture, and in this lecture we will discuss knowledge and knowledge mapping. So let's start with what is knowledge. Dear students, knowledge is basically a familiarity or an awareness or understanding of someone or something. From familiarity, I mean that when we get close acquaintance or when we get the knowledge of something or someone, that is familiarity. And from awareness, I mean knowledge or perception of a situation or fact. And understanding is that concept in which we discuss the ability to understand something or to comprehend some idea or some situation. So knowledge is a familiarity, acquaintance, or awareness or understanding of someone or something. And we can further define these very concepts as it is the familiarity or awareness or understanding of facts, objects, and skills. Facts are basically descriptive knowledge, and objects are acquaintance knowledge, and skills are procedural knowledge. Facts basically are the things that are known or proved to be true, and we see that objects are material things that we can see and that we can touch, and skills are the abilities to do something well or to do something with expertise. So these are some of the things of which we get familiarity, awareness, and understanding. So knowledge is familiarity, awareness, or understanding of someone or something. Let's further explore this very topic, that what is knowledge. We see that knowledge is a thing which can be acquired from different sources. There are different ways, there are different sources, and these sources include perception, reason, memory, testimony. It also includes scientific inquiries, education, and different practices of education. So these are some of the sources or some of the ways from which we can acquire knowledge. But these are not the only sources from which we acquire knowledge. There are many other, but I have listed here few, and these very sources include perception, reason, memory, testimony, scientific inquiry, education, and practice. So when we are using these sources, actually we acquire new knowledge. So again, it is an awareness and familiarity or understanding of someone or something through these very sources which I have listed here. For example, you use your perceptions about something, or you are using the source of reason, or your memory or testimony, or you are doing scientific inquiry, or you are trying to educate someone or get education about something. That is again a source of acquiring knowledge. In philosophy specifically, when we study knowledge, that is called epistemology. Acquiring knowledge and discussing or studying knowledge is a branch of philosophy, and in philosophy this very study of knowledge is called epistemology. So basically knowledge, first of all we define knowledge, and then we discuss that what are the different sources or what are the different ways through which we can acquire knowledge. Now again we move towards the term knowledge, and we see that this very term knowledge refers to the theoretical or practical understanding of any subject. These are the two aspects. Either you are getting the theoretical awareness of any subject, or the practical understanding of subject, or we can also define these two things, either getting the theoretical or practical understanding of subject in a way that either we are getting the implicit knowledge of a subject, or we are getting the explicit knowledge of that very subject. From implicit knowledge we mean the practical skill or the expertise, and this very implicit knowledge is suggested one, though it is not directly expressed, or we can say that implicit knowledge or tacit knowledge is that knowledge which is not direct, it is indirect, and it is basically held in the mind of a person. On the other side, explicit knowledge is the theoretical understanding of any subject or any topic, and from explicit we mean that it is that knowledge which is stated clearly, and it is stated in detail, and there is no room for confusion or doubt. So when we are explaining something theoretically, we try to explain everything, but when it comes to the implicit knowledge, it becomes very difficult to state clearly or in detail, because this is something which is there in your mind, and it is not easy to directly express those details which we have in our mind. So we can also refer to these two terms of understanding of a subject in another way, and that is that knowledge can be formal or informal, or it can be systematic or particular. So actually knowledge has different forms, like knowledge includes crafts, skills, it also includes procedures, and the understanding of causality. So when we talk about knowledge, actually we refer to the different sides of the understanding of a subject or a topic or someone or something, and this understanding can be theoretical understanding or the practical understanding, which we also name as implicit or explicit understanding of that subject. So the term knowledge can refer to the theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. Now let's see that how knowledge is interrelated within a subject. Actually, all knowledge exists in systems of meanings, and this system of meanings is interrelated with the primary ideas, secondary ideas, and peripheral ideas. So primary ideas are at the core, and these very primary ideas explain the secondary and peripheral ideas of any subject or topic. For example, you imagine a series of circles beginning with a small circle that refers to the primary ideas of that subject, that is in the core of that series of circles, and this core circle, for which I have used yellow color, that shows the primary ideas. It is surrounded by a concentric circle of secondary ideas. And this very circle, for which I have used blue color, that shows the secondary ideas. And when we move outward, we see another circle for which I have used green color. That is the outer circle that shows the peripheral ideas. And we see that the primary ideas that are shown with the yellow color, that is at the center or at the core of this system, these very primary ideas explain the secondary and peripheral ideas. So this is one of the structure of representing the system of knowledge. Whenever we read to acquire knowledge, first of all, we should take the ownership of the primary ideas, because these very primary ideas are key to understand all other secondary ideas or peripheral ideas. So the most important thing of acquiring knowledge or understanding of any subject, and that is taking ownership of the primary ideas. When we gain this initial understanding of the primary ideas, automatically we start thinking within that system. And by knowing those primary ideas, actually we become the part of that system of the meanings that is there in that specific subject or that specific branch of knowledge. As we begin to think within that system, sooner the system becomes meaningful to us. Without knowing the core ideas, that system will be meaningless for you. And the moment you understand the core ideas or the primary ideas of any system, it becomes very easy for you to understand the whole system. And that is the reason when we start learning a new subject, in the beginning it is very difficult to understand the concepts of that very subject, because we are unaware of, or we are not having the knowledge of the basic concepts or the primary ideas of that very subject. And when we get that awareness, or when we start comprehending and understanding those primary ideas of any subject, then it becomes very easy to understand the concepts that are there in that subject or that very branch of knowledge. And that is because we start thinking within that system, because all knowledge exists in systems of meaning, and these very system of meanings with the interrelated primary ideas, secondary ideas, and peripheral ideas. So here I have shown you a map, a knowledge map, in which in the center, which I have colored in yellow, that shows the primary ideas, and these very primary ideas are the key to the system. These are the core assumptions. These are the central ideas, and we name it as primary ideas. Then there is a second circle which we have in the blue color. These are secondary ideas, and the core ideas explain these very secondary ideas. And the third layer or the third circle is of peripheral ideas, and this is the space where we have the gap. And we see that most of the research that is being done in this very field, peripheral ideas, we often see that it becomes very easy to discuss and explore these ideas. And this is the space where most of the paper topics come from. And you will see that most of the paper topics come from the peripheral ideas. So closely reading about primary and secondary ideas in any discipline, that is the key to understand the discipline. If you want to understand any discipline and you closely read the primary and secondary ideas of that discipline, it will be very easy for you to understand the whole discipline. For example, if you are trying to study literature, and for that you have to understand the basic concepts of the primary ideas. Like, for example, if you are having the knowledge of poetry, or you know that how poetry is different from drama, and what is the difference between poetry, drama and novel, awareness of these primary ideas will help you to understand the secondary ideas, like the ideas which are there in the poetry. For example, when we talk about the understanding of poetry, then it is very important to have the information of the basic elements of the poetry. And these elements are the knowledge of the rhyme, rhythm, meter, and the awareness of the mood and tone, and the awareness of what type of themes are being used by the writers, and awareness of the line and the stanzas and different type of structures that are being used within the poetry is very important. In the same way, if you have the understanding of different type of figurative language that is being used within the poetry, it gives you the information about the understanding of the new concepts that comes within the poetry. So it is very important to understand the primary and secondary ideas when we are trying to understand any discipline. So from primary and secondary ideas, we can understand the peripheral ideas. In the same way, as I told you about the knowledge acquisition within the field of or within the discipline of literature, we can categorize the knowledge in primary, secondary and peripheral ideas. In the same way, when we understand the core historical ideas, then we can begin to think historically. And if you have the understanding of the core scientific ideas, then it will be very easy for you to think scientifically. So core or the primary ideas are key to every system of knowledge, or these very ideas are key to the real understanding or real learning of any subject, or these ideas are helpful to retain that very knowledge when any person he wants to learn that very subject or that branch of knowledge or that system of knowledge or that discipline of knowledge. It will be helpful for him if he gets understanding of the core and primary ideas, and this knowledge will be there within his mind for lifelong time, and he will use this very knowledge lifelong. So very important to understand the core or the primary ideas. Now let's move towards the definition of what is knowledge map. I have already shown you one of the map in the last slide, in which I have shown you that how we can make a mind map in which we have placed the primary ideas in the center, and then the secondary ideas in the second circle, and peripheral ideas in the last and the outermost circle. But this was the basic mind map knowledge, and we see that there are many other types. I will give you the list of those types of knowledge maps in the later slides. But first I will start from the definition of the knowledge map. A knowledge map is basically a tool which shows or which presents a selected knowledge domain and the connection within that very knowledge domain. But this very presentation of a selected knowledge domain is in graphic form. What is a knowledge map? A knowledge map is a tool which presents a selected knowledge domain and the connection within that very knowledge domain, but this representation is in a graphic form. As one of the map I have shown to you, where we have represented the primary, secondary and peripheral ideas in a graphic form. Now here within this definition we have a term knowledge domain. Basically, knowledge domain is knowledge of a specific specialized discipline or a field, in contrast to general knowledge, because knowledge is a very wide term. When we are drawing a knowledge map, basically we focus on a specific knowledge domain or any specialized discipline or any specific subject, in contrast to the general awareness. So knowledge domain is the content of particular field of knowledge, and knowledge map is a tool to represent that very knowledge domain in a graphic form. Basically, knowledge map is a symbolic representation of a selected knowledge domain. When we are trying to represent some discipline or field of knowledge or branch of knowledge, actually this knowledge map is a symbolic representation. And the process of knowledge mapping involves defining the knowledge domain that we are mapping, and it also maps the relationship within the domain, that what are the primary, what are the secondary and peripheral ideas, what are the branches that are coming out of the main ideas. So knowledge map represents all those relationship within that domain, within that specific discipline or field, and all these things are being done in a symbolic way. So students, the process of knowledge mapping is defining knowledge domain, and we are doing all these things in a symbolic way, and create a symbolic representation of the relationship within that domain of knowledge. So this is the process of knowledge mapping. So knowledge map is a tool to show a selected field, a selected discipline, a selected knowledge domain, and it also represents the connection within that domain or within that discipline or field of knowledge. And all this representation is in graphical form. There are many mapping techniques that are useful for learners, and people are using these techniques for knowledge mapping, and we see that through using these techniques people are creating knowledge maps, and by using knowledge maps they explore the learning materials, and they use these very knowledge maps to solve activities and to systematize ideas, and by using these knowledge maps they construct and represent their argumentations, and they organize and share additional references about any specific knowledge domain, discipline or subject. So there are several mapping techniques that are useful for learners, and they are using these techniques for different purposes, and they create these knowledge maps to explore the materials that are available to them, specifically for learning different stuffs, and they also use knowledge maps to solve the activities, because when they are mapping it becomes very easy for them to solve the problem or the issue that is in front of them. And basically that is because of when we are mapping knowledge, we systematize ideas, we categorize ideas, we arrange ideas, and
In this way, we construct our argument. All the things are organized in a very specific way. And with this organization, it becomes very easy to explore that material and to solve the question that is under discussion. As I told you earlier, that there are different knowledge mapping techniques, and I have listed these very techniques for you. And the first one is mind maps. Creating mind maps is one of the technique that is often used by the learners to map the knowledge. We also have concept maps. There are argument maps, causal maps, knowledge asset maps are also being used by the learners. And social network analysis maps are there. Topic maps are often being created by people to study different materials. Then we have process knowledge maps, and we also have functional knowledge maps, or the competency mapping is one of the technique to map knowledge. And information flow analysis maps are there. Semantic maps and cognitive maps are also there. So these are some of the techniques which I have listed here. There are many others that can be used by the learners or by the experts for knowledge mapping. So what are the benefits of knowledge mapping? We already discussed that understanding the basic or the core ideas help us to understand the secondary or the peripheral ideas, and in this way, when we start thinking within that system, then it becomes very easy for us to understand the whole system, because when we understand the meanings of the basic ideas, it becomes very easy for us to think within that system as a whole. So the benefits of knowledge mapping are that knowledge map can be used as a summary of any domain of knowledge. When we are mapping something and representing the ideas, the core ideas and the secondary ideas within that map, it automatically provides us the summary of the knowledge in that specific domain or specific discipline. It also provides a better overview and a more efficient and memorable representation of that specific domain. As I told you earlier, that if there is a knowledge map, it will be very easy for you to retain the information for lifelong use. So it truly helps to learn new subject or the system of the knowledge. So it provides a better overview and a more efficient and memorable representation and communication of knowledge domain. So another benefit of knowledge mapping is that most of the time knowledge maps include structures in form of links between the elements of the map, and this very thing helps in understanding the structure of the knowledge in any particular field. So this very representation, the structured representation, this helps us in understanding the structure of knowledge in any subject, in any field, in any knowledge domain. So in the end, I will say that knowledge maps improve learning. So whenever we are trying to understand any field of knowledge, any discipline, or any knowledge domain, knowledge maps are very helpful for improving our learning process. So in today's lecture, we have studied about knowledge mapping, and we started from that what is knowledge, and then we discussed that what is a knowledge map, and I have shown you one of the basic knowledge maps that are being used to make it clear that what is knowledge map. And then we discussed that what are the different techniques of developing or of using knowledge maps, and I have listed some of the types of knowledge maps for you. And in the end, we studied what are the benefits of knowledge mapping. So that is the whole lecture about what is a map of knowledge. Basically, by understanding of the concept of knowledge map, it becomes very easy for us to summarize the ideas of any domain. And in this way, when we represent the ideas of any field in a structured form, or if we represent those very ideas in interrelated structures, so it becomes very easy for us to grasp the overall understanding of that very system. And when we get the overall understanding of that system, it becomes very easy to understand the peripheral ideas or the secondary ideas that are there within that discipline. In reading and writing, we can also use knowledge mapping techniques, and these techniques are very helpful for understanding any concept represented in any book. So if you are able to map knowledge, it becomes easy for you to understand any field of knowledge. I hope that now the idea of the map of knowledge will be clear for you, and you will be in position to use these very maps of knowledge in your practical life. Thank you very much for listening passionately. Allah Hafiz.